The Rotary Club of Greater Nashua is celebrating its centennial this year. Once a month, the club is celebrating highlights from each decade. These are the highlights from 1961 to 1970.
As I said, today's program is our 6th decade of our club, the 100th year program from 1961 to 71. I recognize Jane Marquis to start the meeting off. Jane?
All right. We're happy to present the Nashua Rotary Club 1961. It's to 1970, and it starts off with our logo and our service above self, our motto, and that wonderful centennial pin that Dr. Levesque, that Adrian was able to find, and we feature now at our 100-year presentations. Nashua Rotary Club presidents for that decade.
Here we highlight Edward P. Fitch, he president from 1961 to 62. In the upper right here is a grainy dark picture, but it the picture of the newly elected officers. Bottom middle picture here is from February of 1962. The Nashua Rotary sponsored the newly formed Nashua Theater Guild in their production of Strange Bedfellow. And a little tidbit here, in 1961, the meal price at the country club was $2, with 15 cents going to the Rotary. President Edward Fitch had reported from his personal standpoint, the most exciting thing of his year as president was the club attaining a September 1961 attendance record of 99.67. With all the support of the directors and the members, September 11th, 1961 was 100% attendance, September 18th also 100%, and September 25th with 99%. One man was sick. That achievement was good enough to place number 2 of all the clubs with between 100 and 200 members for the month. They lost out to the Bellflower, California club. They had 100% for 5 meetings.
That is such interesting little statistics there, Paige. Thank you. Rotary Day at Benson's. A lot of us who are natives and from the area remember Benson's Wild Animal Farm. What fun. And apparently our Rotary Club was very, very busy there. We sponsored a Rotary Day out at Benson's. And in this instant, it was from October 14th. And Henry Bichard was the special projects chairman. And it said that the Nashua High School Band will double as a circus band for the event, which includes wild animal acts, special rides, a chimpanzee act, and other attractions that Rotary had at Benson's. And from 1962 to 63, it was Henry Bichard Jr., and we talk again about the Rotary plans another day at Benson's. Rotary Interact, commonly shortened to Interact, short for International Action, is a high school service club founded in 1962 by Rotary International. Interact clubs bring together young people ages 12 to 18 to develop leadership skills while discovering the power of service above self. Today, there are 14,911 clubs, 342,953 interactors, I like that word, and 145 countries with Interact clubs. And you know that we have a very active Interact club. And we also see a lot of those students come around again for the 4-way speech test, for our scholarship program. And so many of them are doing so many great things in our community in terms of community service. The National Rotary Charity Fund was organized at the meeting of the board of directors. Treasurer Burnham was authorized to open a bank account back then for the fund with the money received from the recent Benson's farm, the Benson's Day. From here, all the receipts from the charity projects go into, the charity fund bank account, and all disbursements to charitable causes are authorized by the directors of the fund and paid from the fund treasury. So that was sort of the beginning of all of our funds. In May of 1968, the first Rotarian of the Year award was presented by Louis LeMay to Dr. William Thibodeau. And some guest speakers included that year were congressional candidate Paul Rinder, Democratic candidate for governor of New Hampshire, John W. King, and candidate for Congress from the 2nd District. Can't see it because of chat.
Stacy Cody.
Thank you so much, Paige. You're
I think that in May, that's supposed to be of 1963, the first Rotarian. I'll double
I
check
thought
that.
so.
We can
Yeah, I
edit
figured.
that. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Love this.
Here, a smile from March 28th, 1963. Last Monday's mystery program turned out to be Rolly Day in recognition of Rolly's time, as the club secretary and his impending retirement. MC Steve and past presidents Harry, Al, Max, and Ed pulled out all the stops in paying tribute to him. Needless to say, he enjoyed it, was properly embarrassed and appreciated to no end the wristwatch, the plaque, and honorary membership bestowed on him. Up here is a picture, I believe Jack Tully sent. It was a picture of Rolly's personal piano that he practiced on daily at his home. And here we have a little video of Rolly playing.
Was so great. Quintessential
Yeah.
Rolly.
Awesome. And here is a slide from Harry Swanson's presidency, 1963 to 64. At an August meeting, Mr. John A. Erickson of the U.S. Postal Service explained how the new zip code mailing system will work when in operation. Here in the middle, in conjunction with the Rotary International Project, 8 girls from foreign countries were guests at a Nashua Rotary luncheon. Colombia, Venezuela, Cuba, Haiti, Bolivia, Korea, and India were all represented.
Thank you, Paige.
Yes.
I know everyone's still commenting in the chat about Rolly, and Matt said it. Matt Mercier, thank you, Matt. He said, God bless Rolly, and he's up in heaven tickling those ivories. I agree. I think we all do. In the Rotary Smile of November 27th, 1963, it was Remember JFK, John Fitzgerald Kennedy, 1917 to 63. And it says, at about the time you were receiving the last issue of The Smile, an event took place which shook our nation and the world. The President of the United States was shot and killed by a bullet from the gun of a fanatical man. Most of us have reason to remember John Kennedy, as it was before our club that he made his first formal speech in his bid for the presidential nomination. That's amazing, everyone. That is so historic. And then, of course, on to the election. His charm was abundant, and his tour of the city where his life ended was like a triumphal march. We can only hope that this tragic event will bring to light the pockets of hate and lawlessness that have grown before us and among us, and being aware we will stamp them out so ruthlessly that never again can they gain a foothold in this, our land. And there's a wonderful, I believe it's bronzed statue of the bust of JFK in front of our own Nashua City Hall. But I thought that was pretty remarkable that he made his first formal speech in his bid for the nomination for President of the United States at our National Rotary Club. That was great. And from 1964 to 65, it was Keith Vascalionis. Standing are Herbert Pembroke in this middle photo with Harry McDuffie and Club President Keith Vascalionis as they attend an organizational meeting to institute a Rotary Club-sponsored Junior Achievement Program. I remember my oldest brother, Jim, being involved in that at Nashua High School. President Keith presented a check for $2,000 to Arthur Jean on behalf of the Dollars for Scholars Fund. This will be used to set up scholarships for young people who need an extra boost to continue their education. Arthur Jean is shown here presenting the check to James Duras, president of the Citizenship Scholarship Foundation. So all these things we know in our club now, and we do, and we work so hard at, all our efforts. So many of these things started in this decade. I think it's just really, really wonderful. Little editorial there. Go ahead, Paige.
Here's a couple examples of some smiles. On December 24th, 1964, the first Rotary Christmas auction for the club. Ted Langdell, New Hampshire's largest auctioneer, kept the bidding at a lively pace. As a result, a large number of beautifully wrapped packages were disposed of in near record time. In the end of it all, the charity fund was richer by $532.25. On June 29th, 1965, Paul Booley, chairman, took a short talk on the sport of parachute jumping. Amateurs all over the country are becoming more interested in this activity. He then explained that the jumpers we were to see were facing a weather problem, but that they would take off as scheduled and try to beat the storm. After a number of questions were asked and answered, the meeting moved out to the golf course to watch. The plane arrived as promised, circled the area a few times, and the jumpers bailed out. Rain, which had started to fall, made it a little hard to hit the target, but it was a good show.
Oh, begging the question, why would you jump out of a perfectly plane? 1965 to 66, Richard T. McDuffie. Richard McDuffie is shown accepting the gavel from outgoing president Keith Vascalionis. Members of the Riviera College Glee Club posed with Nashua Rotary officers prior to a performance during a luncheon meeting. Jack Atkinson, hey Jack, chairman of the day, and club president Richard McDuffie are shown on the bottom left. You can see that one a little better, Paige. Some of these telegraph photos just were so dark and grainy, as we always disclaim to you. So, but I think we can see them pretty well. You can see Jack. Rotary President Richard McDuffie, once again, and past President Keith Vascalionis present Rotary Scholarship grants during a dinner ceremony to local Nashua High School graduates. And the Nashua Rotary Club's gift of an oxygen tent for use in the General Hospital in Oruro, Bolivia, is marked with a special ceremony attended by civic and hospital officials and incumbents of the Oruro Rotary Club. And Rick Manganello, who's on our committee, reminded us that at one time, and I think Dr. Levesque also, that Oruro, Bolivia was our sister club at that in that decade. And I'm not sure how much longer afterward, but for that decade. So that's interesting.
August 1966, Everett Truex was president. Sorry, until August 1966. He had been recently elected and had to resign because of a job transfer. That's why the dates are a little messy on that main decade of presidents. Leon Marshall assumed the presidency, filling out the unexpired term and then serving his own term, a total of 23 months. During the first term, he was left with no vice president. To prevent this from occurring again in the future, he initiated the post of second vice president. In the upper right here, President Everett and past President Richard McDuffie present a $2,500 check to the president of the Nashua Unit for Children at Mount Hope School. So here we have Leon Marshall. So he was president from August 1966 all the way through his term till 1968. Another Rotary Day at Benson's on March 18th to benefit the new 4-H Youth Center. And Rotaract originally began as a Rotary International Youth Program in 1968 at Charlotte North Rotary Club in Charlotte, North Carolina, United States, and it has grown into a major organization of over 10,904 clubs spread around the world and over 203,000 members in 180 countries.
And those are wonderful numbers for both Interact, which are high school students, and Rotaract, which are college and university students. So the auction swells Rotary Charity Fund. Richard Steer of Nashua sits behind the wheel. Now we need proof of this, but it's far what we're doing with the BMW raffle, but the wheel of a 1960 sedan, which he purchased at our Christmas auction with a winning bid of $110. Well, look at that, it works, was his reaction when he first turned the key. 1968 to 1969, Charles W. Weaver Jr. There's a photo of him right there. In the middle photo, it's Frank McGuire, Vice President of a public relations firm for Anheuser-Busch Brewing Company, discusses plans for a proposed brewery in Merrimack with Joseph Bellavance before McGuire addressed the club. So that's pretty historic too. It's one of our larger businesses in southern New Hampshire. And then it shows a list of new officers here.
A smile from December 19th, 1968, Chairman of the Day, Leon Marshall, introduced Harry Tong, who was responsible for organizing the Amherst Elementary School Glee Club. Harry told us a bit about the group and had them march into the tune of Do Re Mi from The Sound of Music. The children opened the program with Silent Night, and then carols and selections from Broadway musical shows. Their presentation was magnificent and their reception most enthusiastic. We had a good turnout of Rotary Anns who seemed to enjoy the program. Mr. Tong is to be congratulated for bringing these youngsters to the degree of perfection that we heard.
Okay, so the next slide page, we're going to talk a little bit about the Dow Jones at the top here. On January 9th, 1969, Dave Sargent, business analyst, was presented by Bob Hopkins, the chairman of the day. He reviewed his predictions for 1968 and compared them with actual performance for the year. He told us what he thought was in store for 1969. He believes there will be at least a ceasefire in Vietnam, that inflation will slow down, and that the GNP, the gross national product, and corporate profits will show an increase. He singled out the specific areas of business that should do well and said that the Dow Jones average could reach 1,125. In short, he saw another good year. Also in January, but it was January 30th of 1969, our newest member, Jack R. Law, was inducted into the club by his grandfather, Vernon Law, whom we know he affectionately and referred to as Bunny. As far as we know, this is a first for our club and possibly for any club. So Jack, that was so historic. So Bill, please unmute Jack. At any rate, we welcome Jack to our ranks and believe his experience in Rotary will be rewarding. We would like to point out to him that his grandfather has had 11 years of perfect attendance and enviable achievement. So Jack, there was no pressure on you, right?
Right. Well, I can tell you, first of all, I'm not going to sing my part. You all appreciate that. Secondly, his name was Vernus, not Vernon, but that was close. And I noticed in the club records, it shows that my grandfather was inducted into the club in 1969, and I was inducted in 1980 something. So it explains why every time I try to get my 50-year pin, nobody wants to give it to me. But I was in fact inducted in 1969. Charlie Weaver, who was the publisher of the Telegraph at the time, had asked my grandfather if he would be willing to induct me, and he said yes. When I was a kid, my grandfather used to bring me to a couple of Rotary clubs a year. I'm sure my grandmother said, "Bunny, take him to Rotary." But anyway, I did get to go to Rotary, so I knew what it was all about growing up. And when it was time for me, when I was in the business and they were deciding what club I should join, my grandfather was in Rotary, my father was in the Exchange Club. So they said, "You're going to be a Rotarian." I said, "That's fine, I guess, whatever that is." But it was very nice to have my grandfather do it, and it was a special day for me, certainly. He was a great guy, and thank you.
Here we have 1969 to 1970, Thomas Winther. Here he presents a check to John Carter for the Arts and Science Center Building Fund. From a smile in March 19th, 1970, a resolution was passed at a regular Rotary meeting to relinquish territory west of the Everett Turnpike to enable formation of a second Rotary Club in Nashua. By secret ballot, the vote was 61 in favor and 31 opposed. June 1970, Benson's Day resulted in $2,830.38 this year. The YM and YWCA received $1,982. The Greater Nashua Child Care Centers, $425, and the club's charity account, $425.
There's always
And
been
then here,
giving.
sorry.
That's okay. Go ahead, Paige.
In 1970, Jack A. Atkinson was president, and here there's a picture of Rotary Club of Nashua, West, and Merrimack Club received their charters in twin observation here, so there was a big ceremony. In March of 1971, about 200 members and guests attended a double charter event sponsored by the Nashua Rotary Club. This event was unparalleled in our district. President Jack Atkinson realized that there were many eligible individuals in the Nashua community who could serve Rotary but could not be allowed membership because of filled classifications. Taking part were, left to right, Peter Flood, president of Merrimack Rotary Club, Dana Olden of Charleston, governor of District 787, Jack Atkinson, president of Nashua Rotary, U.S. Representative James C. Cleveland, Republican, New London, guest speaker, James M. Kesslin, president of Rotary Club West, and D. Allen Rock, Toastmaster.
Rotary to offer students chance to study abroad. So that was starting to happen. And I think it's because we were working with the Rotary Foundation and Rotary International. Rick Manganello gives us a lot of background on these kinds of things. On November 18th, 1970, the Derry Rotary Club was formed, and it was sponsored by both Manchester and our own National Rotary Club. And then in December of 1971, the Rotary Club of Hudson and Litchfield was formed, and also sponsored by us. In January of 1971, our membership was at 141 members, and the cost of the meal was $2, and it was going to be raised to $2.50 in April of 71. And we thought that was quite a big increase. I thought, wow, that's a big percentage. So anyway, a little interesting ditty there.
Mm-hmm.
And like I said, we've always had that spirit of giving, and here we say the joy of giving, some charitable giving throughout the decade. And that's always been a part of a major function and part of the National Rotary Club and all Rotary clubs. The Greater Nashua Child Care Center is no longer there, but it was really the first community-based center. It started programs like the one that I have been privileged to oversee here for almost 28 years. I volunteered there in high school, got a scholarship from it. The Mount Hope School, it's now our alternative Clearway High School for the Adult Learning Center. It was our kindergarten. We use that building. The King's Daughters Benevolent Society owns it, and we maintain it. The YMCA has grown, Bishop Girton, but all these things were happening United Way. That was the United Fund. Just interesting to look at the history of all of this. Okay. Go ahead, Paige.
And so we've been doing that in memoriam, but it's just been harder with lack of records. So Paul Hebert thought of a great idea to list who joined this decade and are still with us as Rotarians. So here we have Jack Atkinson, joined in 1962. President from 70 to 71 and Rotarian of the Year. Davis Thurber joined in 62. Joe Bellavance joined in 1963. John Sias joined in 63. Adrienne Levesque joined in 1967. Jack Law joined in 1969. President in 82 to 83, and also Rotarian of the Year. Here we have Ernest Marino joined in 1971, and Gerald Prunier also joined in 1971.
Can you all hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, I believe so.
As you know, in 1976, we have a time capsule buried under the Bicentennial Monument, which is right near the Main Street Bridge. And about 5 or 6 years ago, they were doing construction. They were moving the monument, and the front loader broke the capsule, and it leaked water. And we didn't realize this for many months, maybe almost a year before we actually got in there and got it out. And I opened the capsule. Actually, Jack Tully called me and said that the contents are at the mayor's office on the table. So I got there and I looked at what we had, and it was pretty bad. I don't have a way of showing you, but I do have here in front of me an audio tape of the Rotary meeting held on June 7th, 1976. I also have an original ticket, and it's in good shape, of the International Exhibition in Philadelphia in 1876. I also have a flag, and it's in good shape. Actually, it's not stained in any way, that I recovered. And of course, there's this letter to our descendants in the year 2076. And, you know, it says that the 1876 centennial was celebrated in Philadelphia by the International Exhibition, and I showed you the ticket. And I'll go down to the bottom here. It talks about the Robert Merrill, who has a big collection of bicentennial stuff. At the bottom, the last paragraph, he says, "Our great country was founded on the belief that we shall have free speech." It's difficult to read because this was written with a non-permanent ink on parchment paper, and it ran, and I put it through Photoshop, and I was able to get rid of the running and accentuate the black ink. So it says, "Our great country was founded on the belief that we should have free speech and to worship as we please. God has guided our destiny and has been our solid foundation. Anything is possible with God. Have with him guiding us through the next 100 years. You will be favored with a world less triviate, I can't read this, and tribulation, and hopefully we will have formed peace everlasting. This is my prayer for you. God be with you, J. Robert Merrill." So all of this stuff was in the capsule.
Thank you, everyone. And I think we're just going to go right down to the last slide there. And thank you for watching our presentation.
Thank you.
I'll ring my bells.